Hi, I'm Dr. Cindy Dupuy. I have a PhD in learning disabilities. I do diagnostic assessment, advocacy, and intervention. I'm also an adult with dyslexia and dysgraphia.
Hi, my name is Kim Sharman. I work with kids with dyslexia, dysgraphia, and ADHD, and I myself too have ADHD.
Excellent. Okay, so today we are doing the matrix reasoning subtest on the WISC, which is also parallel on the WACE, like same kind of thing here. So, Kim, what is your understanding what matrix reasoning is?
Matrix reasoning is the deep understanding of the ability to see patterns, and not just these are visual patterns, but also that deep inferencing of seeing patterns in everything you do, everything you learn, whether it be history or algebra or anything.
Yes. And people are not, there's a subtle nuance there, but it's directly applicable. So you're talking about verbal patterns, and many people can take visual patterns and turn them into verbal patterns, which is one of the strategies I encourage kids to do, is talk about what you're seeing so that you can hear what the pattern is. Okay. And so there's two kinds of patterns that we're going to talk about. One is sequential, right?
Right.
One goes to two, goes to three, goes to four, goes to five. And then the other one is in a matrix. Okay. And so we actually created a demo of that. And we're going to share that. And it's a little crude, and we're just going to share it in the screen like this because it's fairly straightforward. But you can see here we've got a sequential pattern in which we have a small circle getting bigger. And then you would have the four choices down below, and you would pick C because it's the next biggest circle. Okay. Then we also have a matrix. Now, Kim, how do you work a matrix?
The matrix the logic of the pattern has to work horizontally and vertically, not diagonally.
Excellent.
Yeah, horizontally and vertically.
Good. Okay, so how would you verbalize what's happening in the first square to the second square?
I don't know what that shape is called, honestly.
Pentagon.
Pentagon. So I have a small blue pentagon, and then when I go to the right, I have a large or orange or red pentagon.
Okay, so
And
what do we have going across on the bottom then?
I have a small blue pentagon, and vertically it goes to a
Small blue triangle. So
triangle.
we're finishing horizontally first. So
Oh, I'm sorry. And then so for the small blue triangle, if I would go to the right, then I would want to see a large triangle that is orange.
good. So shape stays the same, size changes, color changes. Okay, so now let's do it vertically. So
A small blue pentagon vertically to a small blue triangle, and a large orange pentagon to a large orange triangle.
excellent. So either way you work it, the answer is the same.
So it's actually two patterns that you're diagnosing or detecting in this one matrix.
Yeah. And so not every kid verbalizes what they're seeing. A lot of kids will try and work it on the diagonal. And one of the answers that we could have had in here would have been a small blue pentagon.
Is it supposed to work on the diagonal or not?
No.
Okay.
No, it does not work on the diagonal.
Okay.
Okay. So then we wanted to give a trickier one, which is this.
This is the one that if you have any ADHD or if you get overwhelmed or you have anxiety, it's like, yeah, it took me a while to calm down and get it.
Okay. So how will we describe what's happening in the first circle?
Okay. So
the first square.
The first square has a blue lined circle with an arrow pointing down. Okay. Next, we have a green line square. Now, when you look at the point of the first arrow in the upper left-hand corner, now the point, if I think of a clock, the point has moved 1/4 to clockwise.
Good.
It's changed direction.
Okay.
So that's really important. In my mind, I needed that clock reference to identify the directionality. Okay.
So over
Now,
here,
in the lower corner, we have a green line square, and the arrow is pointing to the left. I need to do the same activity that I did to the top left circle, and I need to move it 1/4 clockwise.
okay,
Because so that would mean the arrow is going to be pointing up.
okay,
So that would be the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth choice on the bottom.
okay, but this one also has an arrow pointing up.
Right, but it does not have the blue circle on it, which I need to copy that particular characteristic too.
Right.
I,
Yeah, so
so,
the blue circle changes to a green square. The green square would change to a blue circle. The
and
arrow
honestly, Cindy,
rotates.
I probably, if there had been a picture of a circle with an arrow pointing down, I would have probably picked that one if I
Okay.
didn't think deeply about it. You know what I mean?
Yep. And we
And
should have put
that's,
that one in. That would have been
yeah.
a good foil.
But I mean, that would have foiled me because I would have done that initially without thinking. So I needed to say it verbally in order to make it correct.
Yeah. So we've talked about it measures pattern recognition, which is also called fluid reasoning, right?
Mhm.
And fluid reasoning is I can see what's happened in the past and I can apply it as to how it would happen in the future.
Uh-huh.
Or I can look at a set of data tables and interpret what's happening in that data table.
Does it help you interpret trends?
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Trends.
So this also is a physician in the hospital having
Mm-hmm.
somebody come in and present with certain symptoms and being able to recognize a cluster of symptoms, while not exactly the same from individual to individual, you can draw an abstraction. So, for example, we have a cluster of symptoms when you have COVID, and not everybody has the same set of symptoms. And ironically, my husband and I just had COVID. He has lost his taste, and I have been overly fatigued. So he didn't have the fatigue, I didn't lose the taste, but we both had the same core cluster of elevated temperature, runny nose, cough, all of those kinds of things. So a cluster of symptoms, a range of symptoms, somebody doesn't have to have the exact symptoms, but you could draw parallels and see patterns.
What is this? Is this it's not abstract thinking, it's deeper thinking. What kind of thinking is
Oh, it's
like you
called
said,
fluid reasoning.
that's it. And it's fluid because you have to apply it.
In real time, and you have to recognize fairly quickly what's happening pattern wise. Um, I'm not quite sure. I'd have to go back
I
and
know
look.
I just keep thinking of political science when I studied it in college, and you start to see patterns when
Yeah,
governments behave a particular way. What is the reasoning behind that, and what is the outcome? And
right. Or
that's
economies
how
perform a certain way,
exactly.
or artists paint in a certain way,
Mhm.
or um, psychology, people have certain behavior patterns, right? So it's recognizing characteristics, seeing how those characteristics can change, and understanding why those characteristics are changing.
And fluid reasoning is a gift. So if you have troubles in other areas, if you have this gift, it can apply to different.
Yeah, and this is an incredibly powerful gift. Now,
Hmm,
what do we do for kids that struggle with this?
good question. I what do I do? I probably do it
Well,
and I don't know what I'm doing. But
I'm going to pull up an example. So this is from a curriculum called Building Thinking Skills
mm,
by Critical Thinking Press and Software.
hmm.
And I happened to pull up the figural sequences, and they have different levels of the book. So they have really pre-primer level all the way up through high school. And the goal of this is not just to get the right answer, it's to be able to explain the right answer, right?
Ah.
And
Mhm.
so the idea here is what's happening in this one? This one's a rotation. What's happening in this one? It's an addition. What's happening in this one? It's a mirror. What's happening in this one? It's a counterclockwise rotation. What's happening in this one? It's a subtraction, right? And
Mhm.
so it's figuring out what would come next, recognizing those patterns, and then being able to apply it in different kinds of contexts, right?
But is there more than one way to skin a cat? I mean, like for me,
Yes.
I have to verbalize it, but some people, some of these kids are just so brilliant, they just like see it, but
Yeah.
they don't know how to say it. So
Yeah.
how do you teach this
We
based on
we have
the
to give
skill
them
set?
the right verbal skills to be able to do so. So let me show you an advanced one. So this is something I can do this without any difficulty. So on this diagonal line, you're mirroring what's happening.
Mm,
And so it explains now I can verbalize it. I can say, so this triangle on the mirror is just going to flip this way. So it's going to fill in there. This one is going to flip this way. So it's going to go to this opposite corner, right? But I can do flips like these without having to verbalize it. Or
and I can't do that. That's my visual spatial integration. Like I have to turn everything into words, right?
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
But these kinds of activities, rush hour, the game where you have to get the car out, that's a fluid reasoning activity because you have to figure out what's going to slide where and how it's going to fit through space. Um, most strategy games have this as an element. Um, so we play a game called Six, where you have hexagons, and
Yes.
you get either six in a row, six in a ring, or six in a what we call a bone shape. And how do
Mhm.
you recognize that pattern and figure out how to build that pattern? Um, but there's lots of ways for kids to learn how to problem solve. Cribbage is another great example of fluid reasoning. How do I think about the various combinations that will hit a target, right? What different ways can I combine things and can I see patterns in cards? Um, and so getting kids to think about what comes next. So many of our students have attention deficit
Mhm.
and have deficits in executive functioning skills.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that I describe executive function deficits is an inability to apply internal dialogue to problem solving.
Ah.
And so working on how do I verbalize what I'm seeing and how
Mhm.
do I explain what needs to come next helps kids when they're doing a book report and they get stuck someplace and they don't
So,
know how to move forward. Having
okay.
practice describing things allows them to go and ask for help.
So
That
not
makes
only
sense?
does this help, yeah, because that's what I was thinking in my head, what are the things that could disturb the skill set? One is the ADHD, but the executive functioning skills of how to plan and how to
Right.
have a strategy and how to pause and think,
Yeah.
which all kids need for everything.
Yeah. And then there's that ability. So on some of those, doing the mental rotation, like the one that we did with the arrows, some kids struggle to visualize what would happen
I struggle with
as things move or change. And they have a hard time revisualizing what the outcome should look like.
like
Okay.
mirroring, like
Mhm.
people who have trouble with mirroring. That's what you're saying.
Yes. And that's where that verbal description comes in handy. Oftentimes, too, if we go back to this activity that I was just showing, I will have kids literally cut out the piece and do whatever they need to do so they can see the rotation.
Hmm.
So you would cut this piece out and have them physically rotate it initially to help them visualize what's happening in either direction.
Wow.
Um, and so actually giving them things to manipulate and move so they can see what's happening can also be super helpful.
And that brain development in that particular area, once again, seems like it shouldn't apply to everything, but it does
Yeah,
to doing that book report or
right.
whatever.
How does playing with shapes result in a kid being able to do a research paper in history? There's
Yeah.
parallels there. I have to be able to fill in a pattern because the teacher has a format for an essay and they want logical reasoning going from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4, right? This happened, then this happened, and this is the analysis of it. This happened, then this happened, this is the analysis of it. Here's how that comes together. Here are the parallels.
And last question, some people have this naturally, but a lot of kids need to be taught this, and they don't often teach this in school, especially
Right,
middle school. This really hits the roof here because they expect that they already have the skill
right.
to do this complex set of instructions and then apply it to the project they're doing. And the kids are overwhelmed.
Right. And so we use something called a perplexer, which is many people have seen the grid-based logic problems. You know, Bob lives on the 3rd floor, Harry has a cat. What did Joe eat for dinner? Like you've got a whole series of clues. You have to use the clues to figure out the relationships between various things, right? So that's a verbal variation of this fluid reasoning. And so teaching them how to logically reason through that using the language and rule things in or out also helps in other areas. It helps in science, it helps in math, it helps in history, it helps in psychology, like you name it. So this
Yeah.
is a robust skill and it is a teachable skill.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to help break it down for the student and teach them where they're starting, not where they should be. So if I have a kid struggling with very easy items, for example, if we go back to the second matrix one that we had discussed, and I had a kid struggling with this is too difficult. I've got to go easier.
Yeah.
I can only change one variable, not two.
Yes.
So hopefully that makes sense. One question you should ask the clinician if they do this is there a pattern in what my student is missing? Did they have inconsistent performance? They missed easy items and went on to get harder ones correct? Or did they tend to miss little details? Did they go for the foil, meaning one that looks like the right answer, but it's really not, and you have to reason through why?
Mm-hmm.
Or did they have where the matrix one's easy and the sequential hard, or vice versa? And getting a sense of that can be helpful so that as you're doing intervention, you kind of know where to start.
And you're asking that question because it means different things. Is
Yeah,
there inattentive attention or is it something else?
right. All
Interesting.
right.
Okay.
Questions or comments? We always appreciate those. Thanks.